Talk to them and know that is there. Say hello. Say hello.
Oh, my kid. It's more than a bear. She was our friend. Friends don't be friends in cold.
To them and know that is there. Say hello. Say hello.
You keep that stick where it is.
So welcome everyone. Before we start, I would want to remind every one of us to please ensure that your name is used in your profile. I have people with Android 8, Samsung 8, iPhone 4, iPad 4. Please, can you Galaxy X8, iPad 4, and so on. So we do not, I mean, we ought to address people appropriately, okay? So that is the only means of identification, but you can still change it while you're on the call. You can still change it. So welcome everyone. Before we start, I would want to remind every one of us to please ensure that your name. So good everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. I remain Mazi Tochukwezo, okay? Today we will be looking at the COVID-19 and oil price crash, its implication for Nigeria. So we have in our midst eminent Professor Chukuma Soludo. As you all know him, he was the former Central Bank of Nigerian governor, an eminent scholar. We also have the panelists in our midst as well, Marcel Ngobehey, who is also a fellow London Business School. We have Paul Ejime, consultant on media, communication, and election to ECOWAS and EU and other international organizations. Mr. Awal Hassan, a public policy professional and CEO of Great Q Dynamics, Asset Integrated Research. And lastly, we will have, as part of the panelists, Oji Udemezue, who is the Managing Director or Managing Consultant, CEO, Flame Academy and Consulting Limited. Now to start, I would allow Daniel Elumba to please introduce the journalists that we have in our midst. After Dan has done that, we would start with Marcel to do his presentation before we get to the Prof. Thank you, everyone. Daniel, over to you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm not being highlighted on the video. We have, yes, I'm sure we have some journalists in our midst. I'm yet able to go to, sorry, my laptop where I should be seeing all the members in the meeting is playing up at the moment. But once it comes up, when it's time for us to ask the journalists to maybe ask their questions, I'll be able to recognize them. So without much ado, I think you should simply go on and call on our first speaker, and then so that we wouldn't waste much time. We are already 4 minutes behind.
Thank you very much, Daniel. That's what we do have with technology. Sometimes they don't play the way we want. So we are calling on Marcel to go on with his own presentation.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Marcel. So I'll be taking you through the topic in question. I will just be running through some slides, and then afterwards, I think I'll be ready to take questions. So I want to believe you all can see my slide, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So at first, I need to say special thank you to the organizers of this event, the Governance Index, and the sponsors for making this happen. So I'll just go straight. So in front of me, you have a report, OPEC net oil export revenues in billions of naira. And this is coming from the Independent Statistics and Analysis for U.S. Energy Information Administration. So they collect all the export proceeds of countries worldwide. And you see all the OPEC countries here, Algeria, Angola, Congo, and all that, up to UAE and Venezuela. But let us zero in on the country of focus. So when you look at this graph, you see that Nigeria is within here. At the top most of it, you have Saudi Arabia, which is the highest earner in OPEC. But most of the countries are either within this band or they are below this band. But Nigeria falls within here. So let us locate Nigeria. So this is Nigeria here. So if you watch from year 2000 up until year 2018, you could see how the revenues have flowing among these countries, and they seem to maintain the same pattern. So my expectation is if the net export oil proceeds in billions of dollars of this set of countries has maintained the same pattern over the years, I will most likely expect the same level of development if we have capable hands running these countries all the while. But let us look at something. Now, this graph showed the net oil export in proceeds, but when you juxtapose it against the population, because this is OPEC per capita net oil export flow. That means the money you made over this time, share it across your population. And when you look at this, you locate Nigeria here. Nigeria is at the bottom. Okay, so even the oil money we are making, by the time we net it off per individual in the country in terms of the population, we come to the bottom. Let me zoom it in very well. So
Even if
you
you're
could
going
see,
to use earpiece, wait.
you could see that Gabon, maybe because of its small population, has a higher per capita income. But in all the OPEC countries, Nigeria is the
See now. Look at it.
Nigeria
Look at
is
the
the
view.
lowest. Okay, so that simply means that if you look at the standard of living and the earning power of per individual among all the OPEC countries, Nigeria remains the lowest. So the question I would now want to ask, our population, is it supposed to be an asset or a liability? Okay, that's clear. So we have, as of 2008, 195 million people, and we are earning the same amount of oil money from other countries, but by the time you run it across individuals, we are the poorest. And this is our gross domestic product at in 2018, and our annual population growth is at 2.6%. It's being compared against China, Ghana, and Niger. And you can see China actually has a 1.39 billion population. But I do not think that China's population is a liability. In fact, China has found a way to make its population a huge asset for it, and is actually finding its way as a second largest economy and going towards being a world power. So population in itself is not a liability. It's supposed to be an asset if well managed. Now again, I try to look at comparison. Now what this graph shows you is population versus the GDP. So when you look at the blue versus the orange, you're looking at the number of people that are working to achieve the orange revenue. Okay, so if you look at Algeria, the population versus the GDP is slightly high compared to Angola. Nigeria, not bad, but you will begin to make sense of Nigeria when you now compare it to South Africa. The GDP are almost the same, 397 and 368, a few billions of dollars difference. I remember, maybe for those that are very new to the word GDP, what GDP basically does is that if we are 10 in our family and all of us are working and producing services, if these services are sold, the total value we earn from those services, 10 of us in that family, becomes the GDP of that particular family. So is a totality of your products, services that you earn money on within that country. So if you are 10, that means if we put in the whole money we earn divided by 10, that will give you what our per capita ratio is. So in terms of this graph, you would agree with me that South Africa is doing better in terms of standard of living compared to Nigeria. Although we pride ourselves as the biggest economy in Africa, the highest GDP, but you begin to see the implications of this. Look at Iran. Now, what now surprises me is Saudi Arabia with a 33.7 million population. Look at the GDP, around 786. So there must be something they are doing. There must be something this number of people are doing to get this kind of output. UAE also has the same thing. Let us look at UK, US, and China, the world powers. You could see the difference between the per capita or the wealth between US and China. So when you're doing the comparison, that also comes into being. So the question now is, our 195 million people as at in 2018, I understand we're hitting close to 200 million now. What value are we creating, or what value are we capturing? Because that is where the money-making engine comes from. What exactly is Nigeria known for apart from selling oil? What value does Nigeria capture? If we do not put to use the huge human resources we have, we will be seeing this kind of headlines. Nigerian immigrants seeking asylum in South Africa. Nigerians going through boats just to escape the hardship within the country. Nigerians being repatriated and the president telling them they are on their own, especially illegal immigrants. Give Nigerians the opportunity to leave this country to any country, they will take it. And it's as a result of we not being able to manage our resources and be able to take care of the human resources we have in-house. So the countries that have succeeded in making a small amount of their population deliver so much, what did they do? And what I want to bring to term is that this building you are seeing here did not just wake up and grow on its own. People sat down, they architected. When they architected, they had a blueprint, and then they go to work to get it done. So I'm thinking that within the time frame of governance index programs, I would probably be running a series of engagement termed architecting the economy, and let's see how. But the thing is that this is possible. The people that made success, it didn't just come by luck. They sat down, they architected their country, they architected their economy, and they're able to achieve result over time. China did it, and quite a lot of other countries also did it. And in architecting a country, I would want to put it into what we call spot analysis. You need to look at the strategy. If I ask you as a citizen of Nigeria, what is the strategy of your country? And is this something anybody knows of it? How is the policies, the processes, the procedures, how are they arranged, organized around those strategy? The people, the roles, the skill set, the knowledge base, how are they organized to achieve that strategy? Are we making use of technology? Are we building infrastructure? Are we putting in place things that when we put them together, it will help us achieve our strategy? Again, like I said, success doesn't come by chance. People have to sit down and they make things work. And in the process of preparing for this, I took a look into what the budget, because again, when you make this oil money, what exactly do you do? I mean, if from 2000 to 2018, you see the flow of money within the country, what exactly? And that led me into a budget IT analysis of the 2020 budget that was approved. And what I need to tell Nigerians is this: it's high time we begin. It's high time we begin to give a closer look at what government is doing with the money in their hands. And when you look at this, one of the key projects that was spotlighted from Federal Ministry of Works and Housing is the provision of a solar street light in the northeast and southwest, costing over 4 billion naira. And then I ask myself, is this our priority at this time? And when you build that solar street light in northeast and southwest, the maintenance cost and all that, and I bet you after 2-3 years you go there, you won't see any of the panels, and that is 4 billion naira down the drain. So if we pay attention closely into the things our government does with our money, especially during the budgeting process, this is our own way of also helping in ensuring transparency. If you look at Nigerian revenue, the non-oil revenue is around 1.89 trillion. The oil revenue is 2. I'm happy with this thing because again, you could see that the bulk of our revenue for 2020 is okay. You might say is not coming from oil; it's coming from other revenue, which is good. But the question is, what exactly are we doing with it? The government is spending over 500 billion naira on intervention programs around the country. But look at the amount they budgeted for roads and infrastructure. When you add all this together, it's less than 11 billion, and yet they are spending 500 billion on intervention. So my take is that fixing Nigeria is possible, very, very possible, but it's not going to be an APC versus a PDP fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Thank you. Thank you for that insightful presentation. Now I will hand over to Daniel. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible to people who are listening. Unless we'll take just one question to speak to us. Is there any person who particularly wants to ask Marcel any question now? Just one person, and then we go over to Professor Soludo, please. You can indicate you want to ask question on the app. Otherwise, we will simply. Right? There is nobody indicating he wants to ask question.
Okay.
Maybe they're still getting ready. So let's go over to. If we can listen to Professor Soludo, I believe all of us will be very anxious to hear him speak. So if you will please allow Professor Soludo to take the floor.
Professor, over to you.
I think you let the professor know that we are not hearing him.
Oh.
Okay, Prof, we can hear you now.
You can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say, well, I said, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And it's really a great pleasure, Dan, in particular, well, getting to see you. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. We've been interacting and all of this, and glad to be on this kind of network. And like you said, I got interested in joining this network on this particular topic because of the centrality of the topic for Nigeria at this point in time. And Nigeria is facing a synchronized pandemic, as it were. The COVID-19 and the oil price shock. I describe it as another pandemic. It's thrown the whole economic setup into a pandemic of sorts. So when we have this kind of twin pandemic, the question is, what does it mean for us as a people today? And what does it mean for us as a people going forward? It's quite good. I love it. I mean, going backwards to ask what happened then and so on. But the emphasis now, I think, is on where do we go from here? What do all these things mean for us, our people, as the case may be? And let me be clear in terms of my objective. As some of you may know, I have an assignment. I serve in a council, and that means it limits the extent to which I discuss public policy proposals, because I've got a forum where I make those clear. I submit my own views. We can discuss, so I will adumbrate on some aspects of what you asked me to, some implications, and probably one or 2 points. But then also for me is to learn as well. I want to listen to you. I was told the structure is that I speak and then there will be panelists. And I'd like to ask maybe even the panelists some questions. How long do you think the COVID-19 pandemic, how long is it gonna last? Because how we react, what we do depends on our own time frame and trajectory as to how we see these two pandemics, the severity and duration of these two crises. What is the future trajectory of oil? Because that's what we're focusing on. That's what your theme seems to be about, the oil. That's been our past. We've been living on the oil life support, as it were. And now that it is threatened, how long is the threat going to last? And are we ever going to return back to the old normal? Might be a very interesting thing. I'd like to, well, what do these things mean for our lives, livelihoods, and the economy? And how should households, firms, and governments respond? And whether, from your point of view, I understand most of you live abroad, whether there are any opportunities we need to grab locally and abroad. Now, if I look at, I saw the COVID-19 and the oil price shock as double pandemic, as it were. And we all know the origin. And that is that the global, one, of course, the oil price was already, the oil industry was already on a kind of jigsaw, of course, in the cyclical trends. But what brought it home in terms of a shock was the pandemic. The outbreak of the pandemic